What do I need to do to put you in a tax increase tomorrow? That's what the city council wants you to believe, that they've got something for you, but they're selling you a bill of goods. It's time for some straight talk, McLendon-Chisholm. I'm Bunker Bob. This is the Bunker Bob Show. Yes, and good afternoon. It is great to be back with you today. Bunker Bob here, and we are getting ready for a tax increase, a sales job that the McLendon-Chisholm City Council apparently is going to be presenting to us, and I hope that you're ready for this, because if you go to the City Council's page, I just basically want you to prepare yourself, especially if you go tomorrow night to the City Council meeting, because if you've ever bought a car from a sleazy used car dealer, now I realize that not all used car dealers are sleazy, but if you've ever seen the shows or heard about some bad experiences, what do they focus on? What's the one thing that a used car salesman never wants you to focus on? That's price. Hey, don't worry about the price. Hey, how much can you afford per month? That's what they always ask, right? It's like a cup of coffee. That is also the difference between liberals and conservatives. Conservatives look at the bottom line and they say, is this the right thing to do? Is this going to do the most good for the most people at the least price? Liberals look at it very differently. They just want you to look at all the benefits. Let's sell you the benefits. Well, that is exactly what is happening tomorrow night. If you go to the agenda online on the city website, you will see on item 6.5, discussion on the to raise the tax rate to 16.5 cents. And if you look just right above there, you'll see the budget presentation. But if you, all you have to do, if you'd like to see that presentation, you can just go to the city website right there on the front page, and there it is. It's the city budget presentation. You can see it for yourself. And I'm going to take you through this, because you're going to hear them talk about all the benefits, but they're not going to share with you real numbers. I'm here to talk about real numbers. I'm here to talk about what the real facts behind this are. It's a huge sales job. And so it starts with a really warm and friendly picture of City Hall, just so picturesquely. You know, this is kind of what we all like to think about when we look at City Hall. But as I like to remind people, that this is a 5,000 square foot facility that costs $2.125 million. And people hate it when I bring that fact up, because we're in debt. This is the only debt the city has. And of course, that City Hall was purchased without the knowledge or consent of citizens, without their approval. And it went way over budget, but that's neither here nor there. What I find interesting about their presentation tomorrow night is they don't call it a presentation, even though you just saw on the city website that it's a presentation. No. They want to call this a discussion. Doesn't that feel better? I mean, especially for the snowflakes out there, that makes me feel good, because we're going to have a discussion. And then there's a little bit of a problem with that. And that problem is that the city council, because it's of the way the meeting is, you can't have a discussion. You can't have a back and forth. This is not a town hall meeting. This is a one-way conversation, them to us. The only time that you get to speak is during citizen comments. This is not a discussion, but it sure makes us all feel good when we know that, hey, they're thinking about us, and so they want to kind of have a discussion with us. It's just more sales talk. That's basically the used car salesman who says, come on inside. Hey, let's have a seat and talk about this. And the only person talking is them. And of course they'll show you the images. Now see right here, that's my daughter, and this is my family, and this is what I do for. They're just gonna put all the emotion into this presentation tomorrow night. Because goodness knows they know that's what sells. That's the only thing they have is emotion. That's why conservatives like me are their greatest threat. The informed voters are their greatest threat. Frankly, the greatest threat to their success are people watching this show. What you're seeing in this presentation is something that no one else will ever see. The only people who will actually see these facts are those who watch this show. So make sure that before tomorrow night, you share this video with your neighbors and your friends, your fellow taxpayers. That is, if you care about others. I think it's interesting how they open this because it really begs a huge question. It says, in an effort to share some of the points of discussion with the McLendon-Chisholm community, the City Council has organized a brief presentation. And I just want to stop there. The City Council has not discussed, when I go through this, they've not discussed any of this. Not in the way that they're presenting this, not any way, shape, manner, or form. The City Council, and this is what's so confounding about what's happening at City Council meetings, is most of them sit behind the dais and they say nothing. They just go along with whatever the Mark Kippett's, who basically is their puppet master, whatever he comes up and says, or whatever the mayor says, who again is informed by people like Mark Kippett, the former mayor Mike Donegan, and the leftists within our community who want to see big government. Don't forget Mark and Lorna Kippett opposed the tax rollback 3 years ago. They promised you, they swore to you that if you voted in favor of the tax rollback, we would not be able to fund the fire department. And what was the reality? Well, I got elected. We were successful in the tax rollback, and we increased the funding to the fire department by 46%. So everything that you hear from the left, that is every member who is sitting behind the dais right now, every one of them is espousing nothing more than propaganda, empty rhetoric. And so the problem here is, since they haven't discussed it in an open session of council, when exactly did they arrange this, and when did they put this presentation together? See, the fundamental problem is they can't work together outside of an open meeting. So it begs the question, how exactly is this a presentation of the City Council? It's not. Again, they're selling you a bill of goods. So this, just to finish, they've organized this presentation to share thoughts on the proposed budget and tax rate for the fiscal year. So they start with an overview of city services, and they're going to start with animal control services. Prior to 2019, there were no animal control services, and in fact, we hadn't had any issues with animal control. The only issue that we had with animal control was we had a vicious dog that would attack neighbors, and that was a criminal issue. So the sheriff's department took care of that and officiated that. But we're a community of 2,500 people, and animal control has never been an issue. But the current private company that the City Council has been contracting with has been doing it on a per call basis. The only problem is I have no idea what we're talking about, because, and you'll notice in this presentation, it's not giving you those details. But what they are saying is that the provider will not renew the current contract on a per call basis. They want a flat fee. And I think the question that should be on your mind, on everyone's mind, is, well, how much? What exactly is that going to cost? Well, I have an answer for you. It's $18,000 a year. Now, I think that it's a really a good thing to ask because, one of the things that my favorite leftist in our community, Mark Kippett, likes to say is, have you done a study? Have you done a study? He would say this all the time. And Mr. Kippett, along with his wife, who sits on city council, and along with the council, when they were running, they would say, we need to do study. We need to do a study. Okay. Did the council do a Kippett-style study, a cost analysis and projection report to verify the need as they said they would? Of course not, because they don't mean what they say. So that's $18,000 in the budget. Let's keep going. And I think the bigger question as well is how many calls are we talking about per year? That's the fundamental issue. How many calls are we talking about? What are we spending $18,000 for? Is there really a need? I think that's a good question to answer. They could just give us they could just tell us we've had 187 calls this last year. That would be, I think, the average weekly call volume in Dallas. I wonder how many calls they have per week in McLendon-Chisholm. I don't know, but that's neither here nor there. It's $18,000 added to the budget. So let's go to the next. That's a code enforcement officer. Currently, no code officer is on staff. Well, when I was mayor, the city administrator, Dave Butler, who is a former police officer, served as code enforcement officer. The thing is, the code enforcement officer was not used very often because most people in McLendon-Chisholm are law-abiding citizens. They abide by the code, and when code is violated, we had a few incidents where it was. We needed a code enforcement officer. What I find interesting is, the fire chief, as you'll see, the fire chief is going to be taking over this role. And the big question is how much? How much is that going to cost the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm to have him do that? And are we adding money? Are we adding something to his salary? When Dave Butler was doing it, we didn't add anything to his salary. And when we met with and negotiated with Chief Simmons, one of the things I talked to him about was the fact that Dave Butler was going to be retiring, and I knew he had his peace officer. He was a peace officer. I asked him, would he be able to take on that role as well when Dave Butler left? Oh, sure, no problem. We're not talking about very many calls. I mean, after all, the fire department goes on less than one structure fire per year. Yeah, I think he has time to do that. But actually, there is a number. I've been given a number that $6,000 is going to be, I'm guessing, added to his salary. I'm not sure how that works. But what I find interesting about this code enforcement item is code enforcement services will become the responsibility of the chief. Written complaints submitted to the city will now be addressed in a more expedited manner by the chief, watch this, or his designee. Who's the designee? Who could that possibly be? I suspect it's going to be the other firefighters. So they're going to be earning extra money along the way. So bottom line, I just find it interesting. So we now have a code enforcement officer. This begs the question, and I want you to understand something. This code enforcement officer, this is the thing. This is what's called bureaucratic sabotage. And so I hate to get in the mud or in the sticks with you, but there's something called bureaucratic sabotage that occurs with big government, where if bureaucrats don't want to do something, and the legislature says, here's what you have to do, and they don't want to do it, well, then they do it to the very letter of the law. They do it to the nth degree. So they're just gonna put everything in a little box to make it almost impossible for the purpose to be fulfilled. Well, what's happening here is the city council is basically saying, well, if we don't have this tax increase, we will not have a code enforcement officer. And I'm going to prove that to you before this show is over. I'm going to prove it. So keep that in mind. Do we want code enforcement? Absolutely. Do we need code enforcement? I think as a city, Yes, you do need to enforce code. But I will prove to you that they are using this as a way to manipulate you to embrace this tax rate increase. Okay, so let's keep going from there, and we go down now to the level of compensation for city staff. Now, understand the city staff essentially is made up of the city administrator and city secretary, and then there's also the 2 part-time assistants. Now, I want to highlight one very important point, and that is that when we hired Lisa Palomba and when Dave Butler was retiring, I had worked with him on his retirement. He retired after I left office, but we worked on the planning of that, and I met with Lisa Palomba, and she had requested of me and of the city council an executive session, which I can reveal, by the way. I didn't realize that until recently that I can talk about things that had been discussed in executive session if it's not privileged, and this is not a legally privileged discussion. But she had requested that that she take on both the role of the city, because she was city secretary at the time. She wanted to take on the role of both city secretary and city administrator. And what she would do is she would curtail areas of the administrator or secretary role and basically put them in the hands of a part-time employee. The more mundane tasks that are time-consuming but not in need of someone who has the skill set and the training and the background of an administrator. And so we said, okay. So the reason there is not a separate roles of this for this city administrator and a city secretary is because it was at the request of Lisa Palomba when she took this on. Now, of course, that's something that that may her role has, I'm guessing, has expanded because the city is saying that there's going to be possibly hiring a full-time city secretary during fiscal year 2020, and this will address the growing needs and demands of our city. Full-time city secretary was a position on city staff until spring of 2018, which I had said before. Now, what I find interesting about this presentation is that they're saying that this will ensure check and balance system of the duties performed by city personnel. I'm not sure if they understand what the words check and balance actually mean. Check and balance means 2 equal forms of government that have the ability to basically offset or override one another. Does an employee have the right to override the city administrator? No. So can the city secretary override the city administrator? No. So this idea that it's check and balance. Here's your used car salesman. He's selling you something. He's selling you air freshener for your car, but the problem is it stinks to high heaven. This is the way that this city council is basically selling you this. But the big question is, or the big point about this is that city personnel will now be providing oversight for themselves. And so that's the check and balances. But the big question is, how much does this cost? That's the fundamental question that every line item that I bring up is going to highlight. Let's keep going. Now we go to the fire department, the McLendon-Chisholm Fire and Rescue. Now, these are facts that taxpayers need to know. And they start with focusing on the fact that they want to continue the same level of fire service and coverage 24/7 as the SAFER grant expires. Now, what is the SAFER grant? SAFER grant is basically a federal grant that was awarded to the city of McLendon-Chisholm. When I was mayor, we applied for that grant. Scott Turnbull and Lisa Palomba spent most of their time working on this grant. And the SAFER grant provides basically, the federal government provides cities that are in need of basically creating a fire department, which is what we were doing, and provides us that seed money. And so there are 3 years that this is in effect, and the first year is. The first year is for $252,000. The second year, the same. And then the third year, it cuts in half to $126,000. Now, the first year, we're already through that first year. And now we're looking at years 2 and 3. We're in year 2 right now. Now, what we have with the fire department is we have 2 fire chiefs. Now, I still do not understand why a city of 2,500 people with less than 1 structure fire per year has 2 paid fire chiefs, but we do. Oh, that's right. We've got federal grant money to spend. Hey, it's Christmas. We also have 3 shifts of 2 full-time firefighters per shift and paid volunteers. Now, it's my understanding where it says the 2 full-time firefighters per shift that one of those shifts is actually manned by part-time firefighters. If you remember, when I was mayor, I had suggested that we should not be hiring full-time firefighters. We should be trying to enlist those in other fire departments from all over the area, Dallas, Fort Worth, Colleyville, wherever, because every firefighter in Texas works 1 day on, 2 days off. So most firefighters have a part-time job. And the reason I thought it would be important to do this and beneficial to the city is not just the fact that we wouldn't have to be paying for medical, we wouldn't have to be paying for retirement. We also wouldn't have to pay for training, because these are big. These people are with big fire departments. And so they're well trained, but more than that, even better is that they have experience. Lack of experience, as a good friend of mine who is a fire chief in the Dallas Fire Department says, lack of experience kills more firefighters every year than any fire. If you have someone who is in command or who is on the hose that is inexperienced, that is not a good thing. Even as well as they are trained, it is a dangerous mix. And so we could be paying to have individuals who have a lot of experience, well-trained, and we could be getting them for a lot less money than we're paying right now. But again, I wasn't mayor when that decision was made. They decided to do that on their own. And so, I was just corrected that year 3 is 117,000. I've got 126,000 up. So the third year is 117,000. Thank you for sending that in. I do want to be accurate with my numbers, unlike the city council that doesn't even want you to look at numbers. So that's what you have. The big question for that everyone should be asking is what? How much? How much is this going to cost? Especially is the question about how do they plan to get those in the unincorporated area to pay for their fire service? Don't forget, folks, that the city of McLendon-Chisholm makes up 1/3 of the fire district, and those who live outside of our city contribute absolutely nothing to their fire protection, to their fire services. Nothing. Zero. And yet more than half of all fire calls go outside of our city. You and I pay for it. And as the SAFER grant goes away, the city council, instead of trying to come up with a solution to get those who are in the unincorporated area to begin contributing to their own fire safety, instead, they want to raise your taxes. They want you to pay for it. They want to continue the welfare as it goes. The next item on this is the capital replacement fund for major equipment vehicles as needed. And for us to understand this, we need to go to the apparatus replacement plan brief. And this was created by the fire chief and presented to the city council. And it's important to kind of get a look at this. And notice what he writes in here. He says that the annual budget planning for adequate maintenance of these valuable resources is necessary. It's important to note that this apparatus, as apparatus becomes older, the cost for maintenance often increase as well. Here's what I am going to prove to you, that there is in fact only one factor that is important to this fire chief, and it has nothing to do with anything but age. But don't believe me. Let's look at his own report. So in this, he focuses on wear and tear on vehicles, mileage or service hours, and of course, call volume. And for us to understand call volume, I think it would be a good idea to kind of go back a little bit and look at a report that was created by yours truly when I was mayor. This is through July of 2017. And as you notice, I've highlighted all of the calls. The calls inside the city limits are in yellow. The calls outside the city limit are in brown. And then the total calls, that's on the far right. And look at the progression over time from 2013 to 2017. This is they didn't start recording these things until 2013. You notice there's 240 calls total now. There was 165 calls in 2013, and it is my understanding that we're not even close to, we may not hit 250 calls this year. So the question is, when the fire chief says that that the number of calls is a factor in this, well then why doesn't he highlight that point? He doesn't highlight it because it's not important. So let's go back to his report. The next thing is the size of the district, right? Okay, well, why don't we take a look at the size of the district? Because here it is. As you can see, that the total district is 32.3 total square miles. And the city of McLendon-Chisholm, of course, makes up just 10.3 square miles of that. Now, I don't want you to forget that those that live in the unincorporated area of the fire district contribute nothing to their fire safety. So is size of the fire district really a factor for the fire chief when he talks about how we need to replace equipment? Well, let's keep looking here, because he also talks about, and this again is the whole used car salesman point. Understand what I'm showing you right now. This is not part of the presentation that you're going to see tomorrow night. This is part of my presentation. I'm highlighting these facts so that you are not misled and deceived. But this is a report that the fire chief presented several weeks ago. And as you notice, he highlights the age of vehicle. And if you'll see, the only thing that matters is the age of the vehicle. All of those other factors are basically meaningless. And it really begs the question, what's really important? What's really the factors that's driving us to get new fire equipment? Because after all, if you look at the city's own figures, this is what we've, and if you saw the show with Scott Turnbull and I a few days last week, I think it was, you will see that these are the engines. This is the apparatus that we have. I was told we have 7 fire trucks and vehicles, but I see only 6 here. And so regardless, we have, think about it, we have 3 shifts, and they're manned with 2 people, and we have 6 vehicles. And I'm an Aggie, but it seems to me that we don't have enough people to drive the current vehicles that we have. So why are we wanting more? But the bigger issue that should be noted is that Chief Simmons, the current fire chief, when we purchased all of this equipment, and what we purchased was the Engine 1, the E1 Cyclone, that's the year 2004, the Squad 1 F450, 2006, and then the command vehicle, the 2004 model. Do you know who it was that made the decision on which vehicles to purchase? This was last year. That's Chief Simmons. Chief Simmons is the one who made these decisions. And Chief Simmons is now saying, well, this equipment is just outdated. It will not work for us. Really? Why is that? Doesn't that beg the question as to, I'm just gonna say what it is: competency. It's funny how people are criticizing people like Scott Turnbull or Adrian Balcom when these purchases were made, and even me, when the fact is the person who made these decisions was Chief Simmons. Shouldn't they be asking what the heck, chief? Why is the city council not asked hard questions of the fire chief? Oh, they will tell you they have. And I would just say, okay, dry that out and fertilize the lawn, because I'd like for you to show me in the written minutes anywhere where you've asked the chief hard questions. Go back to the recordings. Oh, that's right. They didn't record most of those meetings. Why? Because they didn't want citizens to see it. Why? Because transparency is not important to the city council. When you look at replacing engine one, they want to basically replace it with an $800,000 ladder truck in a city that doesn't have any buildings that really need a ladder truck. Okay, maybe there is. Then show me. Show me what those structures are. Because when I was mayor, we didn't have any structure that needed a ladder truck. But the city of Rockwall, because of our mutual aid agreement, they've got 2 ladder trucks, and the city of Rockwall made it clear, if we ever need a ladder truck, they will be on the way as part of mutual aid. But the other thing to remember is that any future building that's built, the city has control over how high it can be built. We have 2 schools that are plan to come into our community, an elementary school in Sonoma Verde and a middle school that's going to be on 550, very close to between Chisholm Crossing and the City Hall on the same side of the road. Well, that middle school and elementary school, we can determine that it can only go to so high. Elementary schools, by their nature, they are typically 1 story anyway. So the question really becomes, why do we need this kind of apparatus in the city to begin with? The answer is we don't, to put it mildly. So they want to buy an $800,000 ladder truck, essentially. Of course, they call it something else, a Quint aerial apparatus. Okay, so there's that's the snow tires that you get on your car, and it's the True Coat. You got to have that True Coat sealant, or you get oxidation, and if you get oxidation, then man, the bottom falls out of your car. You're driving one day. That's the sales pitch that they're giving you, folks. So listen carefully if you go to city council, or if you watch it online, if they even broadcast it. So be aware. And there's another thing about this. How much are all of these things going to cost exactly? We don't have those numbers. We've got a bid and a spec on the purchase of that ladder truck. Just to put it in perspective, folks, we spent $2.125 million on a city hall that has put us into debt, long-term debt, and they want to buy an $800,000 ladder truck. Oh, but they're not going to do it with debt. They want to raise your taxes so that they can save for it. Remember, we've talked about that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that nonsense. So the final question is bunker gear. It's $3,200 per set. That means that every firefighter that comes on board with the McLendon-Chisholm McLendon-Chisholm Fire Rescue Department has to get a set of bunker gear. And that bunker gear has a lifespan. But the question that continues to be asked and has never been answered, these are one of the questions that every citizen should ask before they raise your taxes, is when the transfer of the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department came into the city, why wasn't that bunker gear moved over as well? Because the same people who are now on our fire department were on the volunteer fire department. And remember, the state of Texas, through a grant, paid for a lot of that bunker gear. So did the city of McLendon-Chisholm. We already paid for that bunker gear. Why do we have to buy a new set of bunker gear? No one is answering that question. They're just saying, no, we didn't get it. It doesn't make any sense. So that's I find important. And then there at the bottom, you see maintenance and upkeep of the current fire station. We can't forget that coming soon is a new fire station. And don't worry, folks, because Mayor Short has made it clear that it's not coming out of taxpayer dollars. You don't need to worry about that. See, he doesn't look at money that comes from the state as tax dollars. That's free money. That's manna from heaven. Fact is, the state of Texas, because of the widening of FM 205, is going to purchase the city a new fire station because it basically takes away our fire station. So we're going to build a $4.5 million fire station in a city that has 2,500 people with 32 square miles total for a fire district. But don't worry, it's not going to cost us anything, right? This thing, if we want to talk about, if you've ever heard of being fleeced, this is the great example of it. And thanks to our mayor and city council who have no regard for anyone's money. They look at this as free money, and that's the problem. Oh, it'll be nice. I'll certainly say it. This is going to be a nice station. But is this the right thing to do? I'm not so sure. I don't think so. Not the way they're doing it. So maintenance and upkeep of the current fire station until the new one gets built, I guess, is really what they're wanting to focus on there. But the big question is, they don't answer, is how much? Why not? Why aren't you answering that fundamental, simple question? How much does this cost? We don't see that in this presentation or in any others. So let's focus on the irresponsible planning for the future. That's what I call it, irresponsible planning for the future. This is what they're suggesting is a fund establishment of a fund balance policies. And folks, as I talked about on the show last time, the fund balance policy is a smoke and mirrors effort to make you believe that the city council is acting fiscally responsible. I'm going to go through it real quick with you so that you understand, in case you missed the last show, what it is that they're doing here. So they've got this fund balance policy, and this fund balance policy basically is establishing that they want to see 40% of the budget to 60% of the budget in an unassigned fund balance reserve fund, for lack of a better term. And if you notice there, if you get 60% of next year's, of what they're proposing in next year's budget, would amount to $592,800. That's 60% in reserve. Now, then they go on to highlight that this city's goal is to achieve and maintain unassigned fund balance in the general fund, excluding capital fleet replacement fund balance, equal to 40 to 60%, as I highlighted before. Now, what's interesting is that the city considers a balance of less than 40% to be cause for concern. And that's really where the city will say, hey, we've got a problem, Houston. And so this is why they want to make sure that they don't go below that 40%. So once you have the 40% in the event that the assigned or unassigned fund balance is calculated to be less than the policy stipulates, then they're going to have to make some adjustments. They're going to have to adjust budget resources and consider how they need to replan for the following year. Now, here's the kicker, folks, and this is something that you really need to pay attention to. You see that? $665,284. That is what is in our current reserve fund. City Council wants you to believe that we don't have a reserve, but we do. We have $665,284 in it. But that's not the rest. That's not the end of the story, okay? Because remember, 60% in this reserve fund would equal $592,800. So what are they doing? So what's the issue? Well, you see, they've got great plans for your money and my money. And that goes back to the fund balance policy. They go and they create this policy to make sure that the city is going to be able to provide prompt response for unforeseen economic uncertainty, unexpected situations such as a natural disaster, yada, yada, yada. Go down a little bit further, and this is what you see. Committed fund balance, self-imposed limitation. And here's the fundamental question that I had when they put this together. The way the reserve worked when I was mayor is if we needed to use it the city council votes. And that's basically the fundamental point of that. I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to basically, no, I think that's where I am. Okay, that is exactly where I wanted to be. Sorry about that. My question was, what happens if something is committed to a fund, and then you have this catastrophic event where the city needs funds in reserve? Well, they answer it in this line, that the commitments may be changed and lifted only by the council taking the same formal action that originally imposed the constraint. My point has been and continues to be that this is smoke and mirrors. It's basically they're earmarking money, and they want you to believe that this is somehow some magical way that they're being fiscally responsible. Don't forget, they still haven't figured out a way to get those who are in the unincorporated area to contribute to their fire safety. And don't forget, I've provided many solutions. One of them is just charge them per event. But of course, the city council doesn't want to do that. They don't want to have to charge people because that's immoral. Somehow, that's immoral. Take a ride in an ambulance, folks. Guess what? If you die on the way to the hospital, your family's going to get a bill. It doesn't matter if you die or you make it there safely. Your family's going to get a bill for that ride, and it's going to be in the thousands of dollars. You get a helicopter ride, it's going to be $20,000 plus. So the city council is creating smoke and mirrors. And don't forget, then they want to focus on the utility fund as a way to create smoke and mirrors. This idea that that we need to have money in the utility fund in case something should break. And as I said on the last show, this is again more nonsense by the city council. As you already know, this fund that they're talking about, the utility fund, is specific to the Sonoma Verde development. The reason why they don't call it the Sonoma Verde Development Utility Fund is because they're hoping that they're going to have businesses and other developments that want to come in and tap on. I think there's 300 or so more taps that they can add in addition to Sonoma Verde. So they don't designate it for Sonoma Verde, but 100% of its usage right now is Sonoma Verde, 100%. So this is a Sonoma Verde utility fund. The citizens of McLendon-Chisholm should not ever be contributing to this unless you live in Sonoma Verde. But watch this. This is what the city council is proposing, that you transfer $49,000 from the surplus, from what we have in quote-unquote reserve, unrestricted reserve, and we put it over into the Sonoma Verde utility fund. This is a problem. This is a very big problem, especially if they move forward with that, because it's my understanding this is an actionable item. Citizens of McLendon-Chisholm can revolt, we can sue, and is exactly what we should do if they should do something like this. Watch the last show if you have questions, because I go into more detail about this particular fund. But also look at this. This is the Sonoma Verde Road Fund balance. Notice here that there's a balance in both of these funds already. And the reason why is because if you live in Sonoma Verde, you pay toward a PID. You pay two portions on that PID. The first portion is your lot. And once you pay that portion off on your lot, it's gone forever. But there's one that stays with you forever, and that is the maintenance fund, and that is where you get the utility fund and the road balance fund. The city council has time and again talked about this utility fund as though it were part of the general fund and as part of the taxpayer's obligation, and it's not. Again, attempting to create smoke and mirrors about what's happening. And of course, we talk about the Capital Fleet Replacement Fund. This is something that is also part of the policy. They're planning for this policy guide. And currently there's nothing in it. The city anticipates budgeting an amount from the current surplus, however, and the council will determine an appropriate amount each budget year to grow the fund. Now, see, here's what happened on the last city council meeting. You have the unassigned fund balance. Here's how they want to split that $665,000 and change up. They want to take some of it and put it in that in that reserve fund, which would amount to about 40%, maybe even a little less. So that we can have a little bit of anxiety about we need to put more money in reserve. But the other portion is going to $269,800 is going to go to that capital fleet replacement. For what? For the fire department, for those fire department, for that apparatus. And guess who's making the decisions on which fire equipment is going to be purchased? That's right, the same fire chief who just a year ago purchased these 3 vehicles and is now saying that they are obsolete and we need to replace them. So the city council in the last meeting, they moved to make this a reality, and that motion passed. So that's what's happening. That's what happened at your last city council meeting, and you need to be aware of these facts. So here are some key points that are going to be brought into the presentation. By the way, everything that I have shown you, unless it says this is not part of their presentation, this is their presentation. I've taken every slide and I'm showing you the reality of each. So here's that next slide. And it says that in order to maintain our unique 1.5 acre minimum lot size and quiet open spaces, it requires additional tax burden when compared to smaller lot size communities. Yeah, here's the problem with that. That would be true for those who want to see bigger government. They want to have more of the stuff. You see, Ronald Reagan once said that the 9 scariest words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." This is the Kippet mentality. This is the Mayor Short mentality. Every member of your city council believes that they're here to help. And this is what they want to see. The problem is this should not be the reality unless we want more government. And of course, this show, I am a conservative. I don't believe that more government is necessary, and I don't believe that raising taxes is necessary, and I'm going to show you and I'm going to prove to you that it's not in just a moment. So I've got several things that I've said I'm going to prove to you, and we're actually going to look at some numbers in a moment. So hang with me until we get there, because we're almost there. The next thing is the tax freeze for senior citizens puts additional tax burden on remaining citizens of a community. The problem is that is patently untrue. In 2016, the very first council meeting that I attended as a member of council after getting elected by the largest voter turnout, by that landslide and the largest voter turnout in the history of our city, the first thing I did was put this tax cap, the senior tax cap, on the agenda. And we passed that senior tax cap that very first meeting. Since that time, we have not raised the tax rate, we have lowered it. And senior citizens pay exactly the same tax rate that you and I do. To suggest that senior citizens have, for some reason, put a additional tax burden on remaining citizens of the community is preposterous. But I just wonder, have they done a Kippet-style study to see if the population in McLendon-Chisholm the senior population is getting older, or if the population is getting older or younger? I think if you analyze the Sonoma Verde population, they seem like a younger group of people moving in. I think that our population is actually getting younger, not older. But we want to blame senior citizens, or excuse me, the mayor and city council wants to blame the mayor, the senior citizens for this, because it's a convenient way to try and focus on things that are not true. Don't worry about what it cost, right? Just trust me on this. Or how about this? In a previous election, our community voted to have a portion of sales tax deducted to property tax relief, reducing the rollback rate. Here's the thing. Here's this used car salesman again. This is not true. And I want you to focus on a couple of points in here. They kind of slide this in. In a previous election, was it last year's election? Because then it would, we can see how it would change this budget. No. It was It was a previous year election. We've already had a budget before. Did the tax rollback was it really that impacted by this? No, it wasn't. And by the way, I think another key point here is our community voted. That's what our community voted to do. The reason the tax rollback rate is at 12 cents and not 15 is because the city council, the mayor and city council, have decided that paying off the debt is not important. They're going to take that gap between the 12 cents and the 16 and a half cents. So that would be 12 to 15 cents. That's the 3 cents. Then the 1.5 cents that they're adding to this, that they want to raise our tax rate for. They want to use all of that. They want to take because understand from 12 to 15 cents, we've been putting that on our debt to pay off our debt early, to save us, because we're paying 4% interest on that debt, and they want to save. They want to take all that money and they want to put it in a savings account where we can earn no more than 2%. Why only 2%? Because the state regulates what cities can invest in, and guess what? It can't be anything risky, not in the slightest bit risky. Bonds, things like that have a very small yield, but are very safe for the protection of the community. So that's what they're wanting to do. And the reason, but if they kept it focused, if they kept focus on the debt and kept that 12 to 13, that 3 cents, if they continued to focus on the debt, then the rollback rate would be 15 cents or a little more than that even. But they don't want to do that. So they're providing you with some interesting points that are simply not true. In a previous election, our community voted to have a portion of sales tax deducted to property tax relief, reducing the rollback rate. Folks, what we wanted to do was the citizens said we want to put sales tax, we want that to go toward debt reduction. The city council could do the same thing with the property taxes, but they don't want to do that. They want to spend your money. And they want to do it in the most irresponsible way possible, while they tell you all the benefits. Have you noticed anything? Have you seen anything on here that tells you anything about numbers, their presentation here? I haven't either, because they don't want you to focus on numbers. So the next final 4 slides focus on comparison in an attempt to persuade taxpayers that this increase is no big deal. That's the difference fundamentally between liberals and conservatives, is that liberals want you to believe that, hey, it's just a cup of coffee. How much can you afford? Don't worry about what the car cost. How much can you afford in payments per month? It's only a little bit. After all, look at this. Hey, look at our tax rate compared to every other city. I mean, what have you got to complain about? Seriously. They want you to focus on on here. How about this one? The proposed tax rate. Okay, now remember when I said that I would prove to you that the code enforcement was going to be the tool that they use to try and strong arm you into supporting their tax rollback, or their tax increase? Well, just take a look at this slide here. This tells you everything you want to know. Look at code enforcement. If we don't increase the tax rate, and here, let me just show you the next slide, because this is their slide again. If we don't increase the tax rate, well then we won't be able to do code enforcement. Now, for some reason, they checked it off here, but they didn't check it off on the previous slide, which I find interesting. What are they saying? So if we don't keep the current rate, and if we go to a rollback, we can't do code enforcement. We can't have more city personnel and forget the fund balance policy. Hey, folks, you know what they have to do? All they have to do is put that 3 cent toward debt reduction, and we can still do all of these things. But don't believe me. Don't just believe me. Look at their own. This is well. Let me show you. They've got one more slide to show you. So let me show you their last slide. This is what I love. Look where all the tax dollars go. It goes to the school district, to Rockwall County, and then little bitty 9% is McLendon-Chisholm. Don't complain, folks, is what they're saying. Suck it up. Don't complain. I'm one of those who believes that all politics is local, and it starts locally. If we don't complain here in at the local level, how are we ever going to complain at the upper levels? And this is important. This is not just a cup of coffee. This is irresponsible government that is being pushed upon us. And what they are telling you, they are trying to scare you, just like they did to get me out of office. They scared you with nonsense. And let's just look at some of these things. This is, remember, they don't want you to focus on the numbers. They just want you to focus on all of the benefits. Trust us, they keep saying. Well, let's look do we trust them? So this is the budget. Okay, the fiscal year proposed budget. Look at this, fiscal year 2020. This is from the website. You could get this on the website. I basically took out all of the things that were. I'm just basically giving you bottom line: the total G&A, the capital expenditures, and the third line is your total expenditures, $1,040,000. Look at the budget in 2019, which I find interesting. $1,192,000. Did you catch that? Are you seeing that? Okay, last year's budget, where we had a 15-cent tax rate, was more than this year's budget, where they're saying we need to add a cent and a half to your tax rate. They have a bigger budget, or they have a smaller budget, and yet they want you to pay more in taxes. And so look at the bottom line. If you notice in 2018, by the way, that was my budget. That was my last budget. Remember how they told you that we had spent hundreds of thousands in attorney fees, when in fact we didn't spend hundreds of thousands. We spent $65,000 in attorney fees to litigate and protect our city from a tower that we didn't want in, and we ended up with a $130,000 settlement where we basically didn't just earn back the $65,000 that we spent. Well, we made $65,000. That's why, if you look at this, you will see that our the budget when I was mayor was $355. The surplus was $355,835. And since then it has gone down. Why? Because of irresponsible leadership. Folks, the numbers bear themselves out. The immutable law of numbers that this city council is trying to put past you is I think is immoral. But that's just someone talking as an old conservative, I guess. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to give you the 10 questions that that the city council needs to answer before they raise our tax rate. And if you're going to the city council meeting, which I hope you do, I want you to be prepared to ask these questions. Folks, the only way for us to stop this tidal wave of tax increases, tax and spend government, is for people to get up and to actually stand up and speak out. You need to be heard at city council meeting, because it's a lot easier at city council meetings speaking out than having to do a tax rollback election and having to spend all that money to try and convince voters that what is really happening in our city is wrong. So I hope this was helpful to you. And I hope that you will subscribe to this channel, because doing so does not do anything but notify you when I've got a new live show coming up, or that I have broadcast one, so that you can keep up to date on what's going on. I hope that this is helpful to you, and I look forward to being with you tomorrow. So until then, you have a great day.